they basically made the choice to leave because the comments that were made to them by people that we loved in the neighborhood and in the ward walked them right out of the church.
Wow.
Things like a dear friend of mine turning to my daughter and saying, if you ever need a real mom, you know where to find me. And because now I'm not
true and faithful.
And somebody else that I loved saying to her, this is really important that you still come, even if your parents are choosing to turn their back on the church. I'll come and pick you up any Sunday you want.
From the Mecca of Mormonism, Salt Lake City, Utah, this is Heart of the Matter, where we are learning to walk in the age of fulfillment, but we are catching up with people of all different sorts. Last week we had Mark Pazant, just to let you know.
Oh, wow.
So Pazant came. Now you guys, he's a mutual friend of the Wahlquists and myself. This is Rick and this is Kari, our special guests. I'm really excited to talk with them for a number of reasons. We haven't pre-planned anything. We've been catching up on different aspects of life, but I haven't seen them in quite a while. Rick said 8 months, I think. Yeah, that's what I did.
Well, it was like a run-in, I think. But
Well, yeah.
It's more like a couple of years.
At
It
least
could be,
40
yeah.
years.
Yeah. Anyway, and they have quite, and I'm going to try to walk with them through an amazing story that I want to hear some of the details on because I haven't seen them in a while. And what happened was it was so fortuitous that I happened to think of the Wahlquists as a guest to come on after we've all been in the desert of different stuff for a while and see what the heck's going on. And I met them when they were LDS and a number of other things have occurred. And then where they are now, and why I say it was fortuitous is because Rick says, hey, we're moving. We're moving away to Georgia and we're gonna be gone in a couple weeks. And so we snatched them right before they left Utah forever. Snatched them from the fire. By the way, how long have you lived in Utah?
our whole lives, really, other than we were gone for about
We were gone for a year. Lived in Albuquerque.
But other than that, we've lived here our whole lives.
Life-
So full-blown lifer Utah people, and we catch them in the last couple weeks of existence. Of Utah existence.
I was gonna say.
And then they're going back. So do me a favor, you guys tell us, because they've been on the show before. Seth, am I going here still? All right. They've been here before, and we talked to them. And so just do us a favor and catch us up on mom and dad's family, and then what you were until about 10 years ago, 8 years ago.
Right. You want me to go ahead and start?
I do.
Okay. Well, being born and bred Utahns, seventh generation Mormons, we were the atypical Mormon family. Born, raised in the family, baptized at 8, deacon, teacher, priest.
Well, I wasn't. But.
Beehive, my maid Laurel. Serve a mission, come home, get married in the temple, serve in callings, have kids. I mean, we lived.
Did everything that was expected in order.
We did it all.
How many years was that? I mean, when you, we'll get to when you sort of the light started to come on, but active without a doubt until?
Age 46.
46?
Yeah,
Which,
46, yeah.
So you're fully in it, you're going,
yeah.
and that really moved us up quickly. So then what happens? Who does what when?
Rick was in the bishopric, and I was teaching gospel doctrine, and we were just like bebopping through our membership and love and life and the neighbors, and did
Never
not
any questioning,
see it coming.
never anything like that.
Had questions, would go, we'll get to that, we don't need to have all the answers to exercise faith, and And then Rick, I was sitting downstairs in the family room, and he comes to the banister and he says, so do you think we could talk for a few minutes? I'm thinking, because I had just had a friend die of cancer, I'm thinking he's got cancer. I'm like, what? And so when we started talking, and he said, I'm just having some pretty serious testimony issues. I said, and? Wow. But he was so nervous because he'd been doing some research and heard stories about it tears families apart and it ends things. In my head, I'm thinking, if there's testimony issues, then I deserve to know what it is too, because Rick, in his integrity, he would never, in our relationship, he would never jeopardize our eternal marriage for something that was anti-Mormon or, against the faith. There had to be some substance to it.
What led to it? What caused you to suddenly have them?
So it's kind of interesting. In my work, I had a customer of mine who was Jewish. And we had kind of a friendly relationship. We'd kind of banter back and forth, and I would tell her Jewish jokes, and she'd tell me Mormon jokes. And one day she asked me about the rock in the hat,
Oh.
And I said, that's crazy. I said, that's not true. That's anti-Mormon stuff. It's just not true. I said, I've been Mormon my whole life, and I gave her my resume of all my accomplishments in the church and all my knowledge of the church, and I said, that's just not true. She goes, no, I think it really is. And so at that point, I looked to kind of prove her wrong, to show her that was wrong. And what I started doing, I was worried to go to any anti-Mormon sources. So I did happen to pick up Bushman's book, Rough Stone Rolling. Mm-hmm. Chapter 1, boom, rock in a hat. Mm. And this is Richard Bushman, right? This is pro-church, very Mormon. And I read that, and it was like, it was lightning struck. Mm. And it was like a 2x4 to the head. And I just like, why have I never heard of this before?
Wow.
This is how many years ago? 10 years ago now?
Almost. 9.
And I was like, my whole life I've never heard this. I've been Sunday school, I've taught Sunday school, I went through all seminary, all that. I went on a mission, and I've never heard this before.
Because the church didn't actively teach it.
Well, and that's the reason, so I said, the reason I haven't heard it is because they didn't want me to know it. Mm. And this is really what happened. And so I kept reading that book, and I kept learning more things I just didn't know. Mm. And then I also, at that point, the foot was in the door, and I just would find out more and more stuff. And the biggest thing for me was, somebody asked me this the other day, was it Joseph Smith that was the worst part, or was it the polygamy? And I said, it was the lie of being told other things rather than this is really how it happened. That's how it happened. So deal with it. But I was told something different. And so I felt betrayed and lied to, and wanted to know what else was I being betrayed and lied to about, and found out there was quite a bit.
Why do you think the lie? Because that's how it was when we all grew up. I'm older than you, I think, but it's just a lie. They just didn't give us anything. Right. And of course, we can all say why we think they lied, but why do you think they lied to us?
Because it looks ridiculous. It looks so much more. You think about the difference in presentation when you're teaching as primary president or teaching young women. You stand up there. What looks better? Someone sitting, looking at gold plates on a table with a petition, and someone on the other side, or someone dipped like this with their head in a hat.
Reading off this.
So right. There's a reason why, because it looks ridiculous.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you really quick because we've interviewed before. No, this is good. So what would you say to them who would say, well, this is the very reason why we didn't tell you, is because you couldn't handle the truth, says Nicholson. You couldn't handle it.
No, because you know what? If it's true and it really happened that way, people deserve to know it. And if the Mormon God is the real God, and the Book of Mormon is the most correct of any, and if you follow the prophets, they will not lead you astray. Why is it different? Mm-hmm. That's why. Yeah. Because they talk about the Book of Mormon is the cornerstone, and this is really how it happened, and follow the prophet and all that kind of stuff, then it shouldn't have to change. Mm-hmm. And if we can't accept the truth the way it really happened, that's the real problem.
Yeah. So the lie. I got you. And I think really when you think about it, that's probably what bugs us most about anything. Yeah. It's going to be the lie.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we want to be able to trust what we're putting our life and our effort into.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've heard it used, Ilona, I guess we had a number of weeks ago, talked about them now doing a soft inoculation with the youth in the church where they're exposing them to the lie early.
Right.
Yeah.
So then it just becomes normal. So what would you think if you hadn't heard, your kids are being softly inoculated, you're still members, and then it's introduced to you as parents? I mean, When is this going to round the curve and the church is going to be fully transparent?
They have some of the greatest PR spin on the planet. Well, everything is presented that way. I mean, when I spoke to my parents about it, they would say things like on various, either we just have to take those things on faith, or I knew about that. That just doesn't bother me. Well, so if it's not if it's not his face in a hat, why was it not presented that way? Well, we don't have the answers for that. Well, you do, but if you admit it, it's because it's not true.
Right.
But then what about all the other things like sending people's wives on missions and then marrying their wives? Oh, it wasn't a real marriage, it was a spiritual marriage. Well, and was it a spiritual Fanny Alger in the barn? Was that spiritual too?
Yeah.
She's talking about a lot of history here.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
I have an opinion or two, and it just makes me frustrated that that's how they're going about bringing the youth into it. My hope is that anybody who really joins the church, good on them if they've done their research. And if the kids are being told this, research and figure out that's not what our parents were told and our grandparents. Well, why are we being told this now? Why weren't they told initially? I mean, get the whole story before you buy it.
Shawn, is that the doctrine really hasn't changed. The words have changed.
Right.
And the method has changed and the words have changed, but the doctrine is still the same doctrine.
Yeah.
The Book of Mormon is still the same Book of Mormon. It's still a racist document, even though the verbiage that they say outside of the Book of Mormon is, softened.
Yeah.
But the doctrine is still what it is, and all that has nothing has changed that way.
So the soft inoculation to the youth, what does it really mean to Doctrine and Covenants 132 and the idea that polygamy is an eternal principle that they haven't changed?
Yeah, I remember I told my brother, when I started having some doubts too, and I started talking to him, and he said, well, what are some things? And I said, well, one, that polygamy, the gospel, the doctrine is that for you to be exalted, you have to be polygamous. And he's like, I don't think that's true. And I'm like, well, that's what it says.
Yeah.
That's what D&C 132 says.
Yeah.
It's the new and everlasting covenant. If you're not going to the celestial kingdom.
Yeah.
So, and it's still there. It's not that nothing has changed again. It's still there.
Still there.
Yeah.
And that's the slick thing about their PR. They can market like madmen. And people buy it. I mean, there's new things out, this evidence site that just gives 150 proofs of the Book of Mormon. But in the end, everything remains the freaking same. Yeah. It drives me crazy.
Where's the archaeological proof?
Yeah. So you come out, you say, hey, honey, what happened? What does she do? How does she respond?
Well, so for almost a year, I was kind of going through this process right a year before I even said anything to Kari. And because I was very scared that it would split us apart, destroy the family. But I have
to say, to your credit, he also said afterwards, he said, you know how much you mean to me and how much the family means. You say the word and I will go back to church and I will never bring it up again. If it means that, it's going to split up our family. And I was like, no.
Great guy.
Well, so, I mean, I just couldn't carry it anymore. And I felt like I was being dishonest and to Kari by having the feelings and thoughts and knowledge that I had now. And basically felt like I was hiding it. Like I had to, almost like I was having an affair or something. Yeah. It was like it was something that I was keeping from her, and that was just a burden I didn't want to carry either. So finally, when I came out to her, she was scared, but she was very good. I mean, like I said, she trusted me, which was awesome. But she was also pretty scared, weren't you?
Because I knew our families were not gonna. Like Rick said, 7th generation, nobody else that I knew of in our families had left the church. I had some inactive cousins and a nephew that was inactive, but nobody had left the church. And we started down that path, and I would ask Rick questions and he was careful not to like overload me too quick.
Yeah, I didn't want to just give her the dump because, I've seen that happen to some people. People just put up a defense, I think, if you just
reverse soft inoculation.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's called arm amputation instead of, But we would talk, and I was still going to church, and he had quit going to church, and it was emotional, and I asked his oldest brother for help. I was like, Rick is leaving the church, and he, such a good man, but he's an attorney for the church, and
My brother, he was like a bishop, stake presidency.
and just, really, truly a good, very compassionate, loving man, but he just would not address it. And then, so I went to my parents, and it was scary for them. And my dad, bless his heart, just said, I'm happy for you. You're going to go on this journey, and, in a year, when you know more than the rest of us know about Joseph Smith, you'll be back and you'll have a stronger testimony. And I was just like, I think not. Yeah. I do have a testimony of what Joseph Smith was, but it wasn't what you think it was.
But the thing that I
sad.
think sealed Kari's fate was when she went and talked to our bishop, who was our next door neighbor, and our friend, and she told him what was going on, and he basically told her to get ready to leave me, and because I was going to basically take her to hell.
Yeah.
He just said, you need to be prepared to make the tough decisions. And I said, you mean like leave Rick? And he said, well, yeah, because he's no longer in compliance with his priesthood and temple ordinances and commitments, covenants, which means your forever family is not going to be forever family. And I said, I don't think so. And I said, if God is love, and I believe that God is love, God would never ask me to dissolve my family and leave the person I love most on this planet over a religious difference. And he asked me for my temple recommend, and
He did?
He did.
At that point?
I handed it to him.
What a move that guy pulled.
Yeah, it was fine. I'd been raised, my dad was the temple architect. I was raised hearing amazing things about the temple, and had great respect for the temple, but I had anxiety almost every time I went. And I had some very sweet experiences, but they were never tied to the temple. I would have them in lots of different places. So anyway, yeah.
So two things. One is you said, describing Rick's brother, very nice man, very good guy. And we've had some other guests recently, and I didn't bring it out during those interviews, but I wanted to, about how many bishops and others in the church are very nice. Mm-hmm. They're very good people.
Yeah.
You literally can hang out in their house, you can be your friends, barbecue. They are not bad people, and that's what makes it so hard for people to understand. Yeah. That you can be nice, but you can be fully wrong.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
For
and
sure.
it actually kind of makes it a little bit more insidious, like, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's because it is so nice, and you're like, but there's a problem here. You know, see, there's a problem.
Yeah.
It's
like a bunch of koala bears, and you're trying to fight them. You're like, I don't want to hurt you, but
Right.
you're wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the second point, up to this point, is marriage. You're saying he said, hey, you got to be prepared to leave. That happened with my wife too, but for different reasons. The bishop was like, you better get ready to go. And you've seen firsthand how they put the church above family.
100%.
100%.
100%.
Yeah, that is so dangerous, folks. I hope you guys listening realize that that's a reality. They're telling you a reality here.
Yep. Even in, we've seen it in, not to go into details, but we've seen it in another scenario in our family where the church literally shut down an abuse case because it would bring it out, and they would need to send a missionary home to make restitution, and our family member was willing to make it right until the priesthood leaders said no. Wow. And they cut it off. Wow. They just shut us down. Wow. And so it's true. I mean, it's the corporation over the family, and that's not what they teach, but that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like if with all this billions of dollars that the church has, if they put their money where their mouth is and they say they're truly Christian, I mean, what did Jesus say about sell all that you have? And sure, they need operating costs. I get that. Well, they don't need what they're sitting on in the bank.
Someone said, kind of a tangent, but they just announced all these new temples, and he said, well, how many homeless shelters did they announce at a conference?
Yeah.
Right.
Good point. Yeah. So you went on the journey, and you started doing the same type of research. And then you start opening up more. Mm-hmm. How about the kids? How are they responding to all this?
Our two oldest boys had not chosen to be ordained past teachers. No, Simon was a priest. Simon was a priest. But neither one of them were married in the temple. Neither one of them were active in the church. And so they didn't serve missions. I never struggled with that because I loved my kids more than I loved the idea of them. Anyway, but our two youngest kids were 12 and 14, and that wound up being, I struggled because I wanted to yank them. I wanted to pull them out, and I just felt it was this contradiction, but I felt like they had to make that choice themselves or it would wind up being a resentment issue later. And so we just said, your friends are there. This is what you're used to. You guys go ahead and go. And I'll tell you what, man, they basically made the choice to leave because the comments that were made to them by people that we loved in the neighborhood and in the ward walked them right out of the church. Wow. Things like a dear friend of mine turning to my daughter and saying, if you ever need a real mom, you know where to find me. And because now I'm not
true and faithful.
And somebody else that I loved saying to her, this is really important that you still come, even if your parents are choosing to turn their back on the church. I'll come and pick you up any Sunday you want. And people cornering, my son would come home, Aaron would come home, and people would stop him in the hall at church and say, don't tell your dad that I'm asking, but how are you really doing?
Oh, God.
How are your parents at home if they're not? And wanting to be secretive, well, that's not family first. That's not being respectful of your parents and honoring your parents. And our kids it was devastating to them to see, but I was all, woo, let's go team, because that's where my kids were like, I don't want any part of this.
And you guys at home, this is why they're called a cult. It's because it is a cult mentality. They don't seem like it, but if you're in it, they treat you when you leave or question it like a cult would treat its departing members. There's all these whispers, there's a secret stuff, they'll break up the family. It is hardcore there in that church. And the Wahlquists are relating that to you. So the kids come out, and now I want to kind of segue into part two.
Okay.
What the heck did you guys do? And explain that experience and what it led to now.
Right. So I had I guess leaving Mormonism, I still needed something in my life, Christ and God, wasn't quite sure where to, what that meant exactly, but we kind of fell in with one of Kari's friends and started going to an evangelical church, and got really involved in that for 2 or 3 years. Being the whole evangelical, born again, all that, and for a while it filled a void. And it was a really good experience until it wasn't. Then it started. After maybe the novelty or the shock and awe wore off, it started to feel.
Shock and awe.
It started to feel just like Mormonism, restrictive, condemning, and even I would say unloving, even though we'd talk about love and all this stuff, but it's loving if,
always
if.
Loving if.
Yeah.
And that friend, just a little, if I could interject this, that friend talked to me about 2 weeks ago, and she said through COVID, she has seen the true colors of that group and how they want butts in seats. And that was the term they used. Wow. And you're living in fear. if you do not show up to church, and that was back in July and August of last year during COVID. Wow. They wanted people butts in seats, and you're sinning because you're living in fear if you don't show up. And so she says, I still, Jesus is my everything, and that kind of stuff, but organized religion, she said, I'm having a struggle.
Well, and I remember, I think I was starting to have these, they were different than the Mormon questions, but it was just feeling the same, and I think it was about Christmas time, or, you always have like the money drive and, want to build a building, and then,
right.
And I'm like, okay. Oh, that's the other thing too, is for some reason, tithes, the law is abolished.
Yeah.
Okay, the law is gone, so there's no more law,
Yeah.
except tithing.
Yeah.
For some reason, tithing can carry over.
Yeah.
So I didn't get that.
I got to insert really quick. Look, if they know what they're talking about, they came from a religion that preached tithes. Legalism. We'll love you conditionally. We'll pretend to love you unconditionally, but if you don't conform, we're going to cut you and your family up, and we're going to cut you up. They go to an evangelical church. They needed something. This is what happens with LDS people. We need something to go to, and you go and you're embraced with these unconditional arms of love until you start to see it unfold. And it's Mormon light. It's the same freaking thing.
Exactly.
And so you are seeing they're using tithing, which is just, it really bugs me. Are you seeing the same things?
Yeah. And I mean, the tithing thing was really rubbing Rick the wrong way. One of the things which really...
And it wasn't even given the money.
Right.
No, it was the requirement.
Yeah.
And the other thing that they were really pushing was, if you're a Christian and you're part of this congregation, you will serve. Oh. And they wanted me, which I was having a good time. I wasn't comfortable yet because I mean, honestly, truly coming here and reading the Bible in context and understanding the Greek and the Hebrew, we'd never had that given to us because they cherry pick and whatever supports the Mormon scripture. Right. So I was just getting my feet wet, and so I wasn't comfortable teaching anything, but they dropped me into a class to teach the youth, which I was happy to do, but I kept saying, I'm not comfortable with this yet, just follow the lesson. And then when I said, okay, I'm not ready for this yet, I taught for a couple of months, and I was like, I'm not ready for this. And the pastor's wife said, well, if you're part of the congregation and you truly love the Lord, then you serve. That's what you do. And I was like, wait, I haven't even been coming here for a year yet.
Wow.
Can I have some space?
Wow.
And trying to figure out my own struggle, because also I didn't know, could I trust the Bible? Because I couldn't trust the Book of Mormon anymore, and the Doctrine and Covenants was a huge farce. So what could I trust? Could I even trust the Bible? But go teach it to these little kids.
Yeah. Wow.
But the other thing that was bothersome to me was that the dinosaurs were made really small to fit on the ark. So when that happened, I was like,
he said,
was like, we're out of here.
Tell the audience what you're talking about.
Well, the lessons on the creation of the earth and the young earth, and with that you've got dinosaurs, but to make that all work, dinosaurs had to be on the ark.
Honey, I shrunk the dinosaurs.
And the only way that would happen is if God made them really small to fit on the ark. So
you cannot do this to a former Mormon. They have been told, well, it doesn't really matter. Well, Joseph could have done, or anything's possible, So when you tell a former Mormon in a Christian church, well, I think God shrunk the dinosaurs down, you've lost them. You freaking idiots. Yeah. You're so damn stupid with your religion. Instead of saying, I don't know, who knows? Maybe they weren't dying. I have no idea, man. I'm sorry.
Well, and they would say like, well, can't God do anything?
Yeah.
I'm like, God could do anything, but God's not a genie in a bottle. He's not a magician, I mean, that's just, it's stupid.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I'm gone.
So it was at that point, it was the shrunken dinosaurs that caused the Wahlquist to run.
With this, and then that, I remember that week I said, okay, straw that broke the camel's back, I'm gone. This is ridiculous. I was like,
And so some other things that fit in harmony with that are things like the world was created in 6 24-hour periods, that you must embrace this as a doctrine, that as a doctrine, this is a doctrine. In order to be a Christian, the Bible is infallible, inerrant. There's not a single word wrong with it. There are a litany of problems with Christian rhetoric answering these things. But the problem I have, and why the Wahlquists are so dear to me to be here, is that they've gone through it from being LDS faithful, being burned, going to a Christian church that is kind of popular in this county, and being burned again because all they did was think. That's all they did was think. So what has it led to? I know that I remember they were kind of coming to campus too, and sitting here listening to me and just figuring things out. And then Rick started hiking, and I said, "Hey man, that's God's real church. So you go hike." So he hiked. So what's happened with you guys? You've been hiking in the wilderness now. He literally was going like how many miles?
Oh my gosh, he was going 5 or 6 times a week, but Sundays, every Sunday.
Yeah.
And that was, and kind of tongue in cheek, a little bit of a dig, but also, oops, sorry, Seth, I keep clacking my microphone, but also from a very genuine thing, he would put a hashtag about church service in the mountains or church service, whatever, because it really is.
You were taunting everyone?
Yeah.
A little, but also truly, Shawn, though, I mean, that was one of the coolest things, and I said this to a friend last night. My spiritual experiences, and I know Rick has said this too, are not tied to things that happen in a church, in the temple, whatever. They can happen in the mountains. They can happen at a lake. They can happen in a freaking movie theater. They can, it's divine spiritual connection.
Amen.
And in the mountains and out in wilderness, it is just the energy and the gratitude for what it is, how beautiful it is out there and stuff. I have to say, I still miss connection with groups. I still miss the sisterhood of, I went to a women's Bible study that I loved, and I loved the connection and all that kind of stuff. But this walk out of Mormonism and being able to spend Sundays together in the mountains or just with family and connect to God the way we connect to God has been a stronger connection and better for our marriage, our family, and our testimonies, or however you want to put it, than any amount of time spent in a church.
I was thinking about this, and we're like Kari with the groups, and I was kind of involved with the group for a long time, and we would just hash different topics or argue about different things over and over again. And the great philosopher Sammy Hagar,
of course,
there's only one way to rock.
Yeah,
he talks about mental masturbation.
Yeah,
it started to feel like just religious masturbation.
Yeah,
like
totally get it.
This is a family show.
As a man, we get it.
That's all it was,
Yeah.
And it was like, it's just like pointless.
Yeah.
And
over and over and over again. Let's massage each other and
right. Yeah. So, I'm telling you, just getting away from all organization, any groups, and just doing my own spiritual journey. I would go out in the desert for days and just, or hiking. We'd go camping sometimes, or I would just hike and just in my own thoughts. And I'm telling you, in my life now and there, I've never been in a better place spiritually, mentally, in all aspects of my life than I ever was in any form of a religion or group.
Wow. Wow. I just want to point something out. If we take Rick and Kari and we take what could have happened with them and their family under Mormonism, which was to break up what they had, we could take them and what could have happened within Christianity too, because I'm sure some pastor would have said, well, you better choose the Lord and come into his church or going off into some other thing. They would probably do the same thing. What is of God? For a couple who are in love, stay married, stay with their kids, hike together, enjoy life, and never go to a church again, or be part of some institution that would endorse them breaking up. And yet almost every church would say, well, they got to follow the Lord. They got to follow the institution. And I got to tell you, their departure included campus. They didn't come back to campus. They didn't come here either. I don't care. We've never cared. We care about what people are doing freely in their relationship with God. They have that right, in my opinion, because of Christ. They have the access to the Father, which they didn't have before, and they have it. They've stayed together, which is what God loves. Their children are together, which is what God loves. They're contributors to this world. They live responsibly, which is God loves. But the fucking churches would rather have them depart and serve the church than the marriage. Good job.
Amen.
Wahlquist.
Captain.
All right. Rock on. Boom.
That's right.
Now, we have to do one quick soapbox. You got COVID.
Oh gosh, yes.
Now
I
listen,
got
she's
COVID.
in the healthcare profession. And we've had different things come up, that have questioned it and talked about it. We have people coming here that don't believe, they think it's just another cough, like anything else and all that. We've heard it. I want you to represent the other side of the story.
I will represent.
All right.
So I've had the flu. I've had pneumonia. I've been sick before, but I have never been so sick as when I had COVID. I came down with it July 7th and could not return to work until August 17th. And I was still so fatigued and drained, but I was in bed. I would drag my rear end to the bathroom a couple times a day, but it was torment getting out of bed. I was in bed for 10 days and so sick, achy, tremendous headaches, horrible cough, chest pain. Sorry, Seth. Chest pain. It was a nightmare. Wound up getting secondary pneumonia from it. But then long haulers stuff of fatigue, brain fog, headaches, those kind of things are ongoing. And it really is heartbreaking to me because I work in senior care. I have watched that population be slammed, and the mental and emotional anguish of not being able to see family was horrible. But I understand why they had to do it, because watching them die and holding their hand while they passed or while they suffered with it,
which
is
she did a lot.
Nightmare.
She would literally be with many people that have passed from COVID.
Wow.
And it was from COVID. I mean,
Okay, I'm going to interrupt because I'm representing an audience that says things like, well, are they just diagnosing it at COVID because it's convenient? Was it really something else?
how is it convenient to diagnose COVID? It's not. And when you have a test that can show that that's what it was, and we were tested twice a week. I've had more Q-tips shoved up my nasal cavity because they were looking for it, watching for it, being so cautious because it can be deadly, but also not just deadly. Sure, everybody doesn't die that gets it, but there are so many long-term effects from COVID that we still don't even know all the specifics on. The lung damage, the heart damage, the brain effects, the strokes, the blood clots. It's a real disease. Personally, I honor the people that will wear a mask. For pity's sake, wash your damn hands, be a clean person, social distance, get your vaccines. I know that's a sticky topic, but the people that are protesting doing that, to me it feels selfish because it can have such a huge effect to save lives and save life-altering effects from COVID, just to do those few small things. Nobody's interested in taking away somebody else's freedom. Nobody else is interested in, putting you underneath your thumb and just keeping you in a certain spot. And nobody's injecting you with things that the government can follow you.
Bill Gates isn't living in my blood.
Such BS. I mean, really.
Okay, so really quick, devil's advocate here. what someone would say, not me,
Okay.
is, well, Kari, yeah, you caught the disease and it affected you far, far worse than it did your husband. He got it
Right.
too and it affected him for a little while.
Right.
Doesn't that, every disease does that to some extent, you know?
Right.
So should we all shut down the economy and everything else?
Of course not. Of course not. But let's use common sense. If I have the flu and I come over and I sneeze on you, that's horrible.
Yeah.
So let's do the things that we can do to prevent passing this around. It's had a catastrophic effect economically on so many lives, and I get that. No, we shouldn't shut everything down and keep it shut down, but I think using common sense and moving in that direction, and for the people that say, well, you just worked with old people and they're old people. Yeah, you know what? Those old people have lived unbelievably amazing lives. They're worth saving. They have families who want them to live, who have been deeply affected and are grieving. So yeah, COVID is real and it doesn't affect everybody the same way. Some people recover from cancer and some don't.
Right. But we should be
We do what we
responsible to
can.
protect others.
Right.
I had to give her this platform because we've had other people pop up with stuff and, make me wear the mask, and they've shut that, so I'm just giving a follow-up to give that opinion validation. And by the way, in my life, the people who stand as strongly as Kari does, and she's in with this group, are all from the medical profession. I got two friends, my best friend growing up and another friend in St. Louis, ER doctors. I'll be like, should you get this? They're just like, shut up and get it. This thing is serious. We are watching people come in and die from this. So this idea that it's just made up by the government to control us, no, they say. Okay, so back to the topic at hand. Now you guys have been burned in some ways, small dinosaurs, in evangelicalism, tithing dinosaurs, and you've gone out and you're hiking, and now we come to you guys are leaving the state. This is your home state. You're going to alligator land. You're gonna go off and live another life. Where are you? Share with, and I'm curious, where are you in your heart? You've never felt closer to God. What does that mean? And is that allowable to people who think, I've got to be going to church to be close to God?
So I'm sure it's probably not, but so this is where I'm at. I don't know, and I don't really care.
Okay.
I've lost the need to know everything, to know what the true church is, what this or that is. We have, I don't not believe in God, but I don't know exactly what God is. I don't not believe in Jesus, but I don't know exactly what it is. Now, and I've followed you for a long time, and we talk about, Jesus paid for all of us. And if that's the case, hallelujah. So I don't need to worry about anything anymore. And I try and live, I kind of consider myself a golden ruler rather than a Christian.
Okay.
I want to treat people like I would want to be treated, and live a fruitful life that contributes to the world in the way that I think that Christ teachings, that if you listen to what his teachings were, that's what he'd want you to do. And I don't need to do that in the context of, am I a Christian? Am I evangelical? Am I a Mormon? I'm just me, and I'm just trying to live the best life I can under that context. And I don't, to me, it doesn't make sense. I have a hard time logically in my mind thinking that God, if we come down here on this life, and one thing I've always struggled with is we talk about how this world is, there's nothing good, and in the evangelical, the Christian church, evangelicals, we always talk about there's nothing good in me, and you've even said that, there's nothing good in me, and I struggle with that because I think there's good in all of us, and I think that if God created me, and if he created me in his image, then that's pretty cool. And I also think that if I screw up or do something that is against what, it doesn't make logical sense to me that someone's got to die for that. If God's all powerful, can't he just say, you know,
Thanks for being
yeah, sorry, you know,
Yeah.
you will take care of it. I don't need to torture and kill someone to make that right.
Right.
So it logically, it doesn't make sense to me.
Got it.
But the teachings do. So I guess, you know, people would not consider me Christian because I don't feel that that is necessary in a logical sense. I keep thinking about, you know, the reasonable man. In a court of law, we talked about the reasonable man. What would a reasonable man think? And I just don't see it logically, personally.
And from that response, you would have some Mormons say, well, don't have your temple covenants, you're gone. You'd have Christians who say, you haven't said Jesus is Lord and Savior and his propitiated blood saves you, you're gone.
Right.
And everyone is saying you're gone, you're going to hell, you're not with God. But I would just say, it's all between you and God. And however he's leading you, and that is your right and your responsibility. And if you've chosen to walk the golden rule, praise God. I mean, so many Christians don't even do that, you know? So it's all independent, and it's what God is doing. And if his son took care of everything, which I believe you may not, and paid for the sin, you're okay, you know, and at least from my perspective as a Christian. And I think that's great. I think it's great you can articulate it and express it freely. You're more like George Fox, who founded Quakers. You're kind of a Quaker.
I'm a kind of Quakerate.
You're a Quakerate, yeah.
Wow.
So consider looking into the Quaker. No, I'm just kidding.
Oatmeal.
I've been called Cracker a few times.
Nice.
And how about the wife? Have you followed the same way? Are you on the same place?
Similar, I think so. My focus has more been on, I do believe that there is a divine creator. I also, at this point, can say, and it's taken me a long time to get there, I felt like I would say it quietly, because I was afraid of it would hear, type of a thing for a while. But I really believe that there is a divine creator. I don't know what that looks like, but I can't deny, I'm also with Rick in terms of, you know, we grew up saying, I know this church is true. I know Joseph Smith was a prophet. Wrong answer. And I don't know exacts, but I have had experiences that witness to me that there's another life, that there's something to look forward to, you know, after this life. But I do believe that treating people with love and treating people kinder than they treat us shows where our heart really is. And that's where I choose to live my life from. So I struggle with the concept of, which is really weird. I don't know. I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud.
Yeah, say it.
But I struggle with the concept of Jesus being a God. I remember the first time my dad said to me, I was probably in my mid-20s, and he said, some people actually believe that Jesus was just a teacher. And thinking, and honestly, it's so weird to me, it's ironic to come to this point that to me, it's a tradition, and I respect people that choose to follow that. And I believe there's so much beauty and so much love in that. But I'm still working through the process of being lied to. And for me, just like my tattoo says, it was a big skeleton key, and I got it on purpose, and it says, prove all things. I don't want to be lied to again. So I'm taking my time. One of the things that I love about you, Shawn, is that you don't judge people based on what they choose to believe. You're comfortable in your own skin, and you're comfortable with your beliefs, and you honor other people in theirs. And you would always call us, you'd say they're searchers, they're seekers. You're seeking for truth. And I'm still in that walk. I haven't arrived anywhere yet, but I do really embrace the concept of loving people and serving people that are elderly, that need a little extra and deserve a little extra TLC, whether they're in their Alzheimer's state or they're just aging and have their wits about them. I love serving in that capacity and just loving the living hell right out of them.
What a beautiful thing.
And it's just, that's what I feel called to do. And all my quirks and my spiritual experiences, even as a tiny girl, and wondering, how my little spastic energy and, all those things have come together. This is why I was created, is to serve whatever God is by loving on those who are so near and going through their transition out of this life.
I gotta say, man, the way you guys are walking it and living it, irrespective of what my doctrinal beliefs are, it's as great a picture of being a Christian as any I've ever heard. So what's the difference if our doctrinal views are opposite? Because I can differ doctrinally with everybody, but you guys are walking the walk. I mean, you're serving old people with your life, and you do it from the heart. And you're saying, hey, I'm just gonna be free and I'm gonna try to live the golden rule. I mean, you could have turned into dogmatic despots who are pointing at the camera and saying, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. And you haven't. So the end product in the Wahlquist life is a beautiful thing. And I really believe that. I wouldn't say it if I didn't think it. Really glad you guys took the time before you leave. I love your family, always have, and think the most of you guys.
Shawn and Mary and
you guys
girls.
you're gonna be a bright light to Savannah, Georgia. You're gonna scare the alligators.
I will scare
He's
them.
gonna eat them. Any final thought for the audience? The Wahlquist journey through religion. Any final thought to people who might be like you?
I just think I think the biggest thing for me years ago that started this whole process was I remember there was a time when I literally had to give myself permission to question, because before it wasn't allowed, it wasn't permissible, it was evil, and I remember giving myself the permission to question and to think for myself. And that moment, the light came in, and this process started. And it's a painful process, and it's certainly not easy. But I'll tell you, it's been the most amazing process. And like I said before, where we're at now, is immeasurable. I feel so much better in my life, in all aspects of my life, than we ever did in Mormonism, in the heights of Mormonism, when we were serving in large callings and everything else. When people would maybe look at our lives and we're like the poster child Mormon family. This is far and above anything that ever was.
Beautiful.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Kari?
I would just say, trust your heart, and if something's not sitting right, there's a reason for that, and you deserve to look. You deserve to have the truth, and don't be afraid of what you'll find. I prayed when I was leaving, I prayed that the church would be true, because I wanted it to be true, because I knew the journey out would be so difficult, and it has been, but it has been the most beautiful. And I'm proud of our kids and our grandkids for making their own decisions. And why would God not want you to think for yourself? And there's so many tools out there now to find truth and live your truth, live to integrity. Like Rick said, it got to be too much to bear, and he couldn't live something that was a lie. Live your truth. That's what I would honestly say, is research it. If it's true, if the church is true, fabulous, go to church. But at least do it knowing you have really done the research.
Or search your heart, right?
Yeah, and then search your heart and say, is this really how I want to live all my life? Because sitting holding those people's hands as they pass and talking with them and listening to their journey, why would you want to spend all your precious time going around the sun living something you really are not sure of? Why would you not want to just live and connect and be with what is your truth?
From the mouth of seekers who I really do respect and love, thanks so much for taking the time to come on here before you go.
Thank you, sir.
And then we'll see you next week here on Heart of the Matter.